I think this year is going to, as I've said all along, I think it's going to be the year of the truth bomb.
Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us. Sean from SGTReport.com here, and I have back on the line our friend Bill Holter from JS Mindset, and we're going to talk about all things Trump. Bill, welcome back.
Hi, Sean.
How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you. Just a week and a half here into office, and Donald Trump is really the rabble-rouser in chief, isn't he? All sorts of different schools of thought here, and we could not have a more divided populace in terms of opinion, even within our own ranks, Bill. I did a video called The Horrible Truth About Trump, which essentially praised the man for doing many good things for the Republic, and then I did a follow-up video called Trump, Truther or Tyrant, and really called him out for so many of these executive orders which are unconstitutional. And then I want to read for you the top comment I got on that video, which was this from James Williams saying, SGT report, you guys seriously need to quit about the Trump Trojan horse type stuff. You're getting as bad as mainstream media. I used to enjoy listening to you guys, but I'm starting to hate it. Trump is keeping all of his promises, and he's only been in office 4 days. What more do you want from him? He's only human. And now we have an article from Wayne Madsen saying a week in office and Trump brings on constitutional crisis. We're really doing a balancing act here, trying to, just report the facts, Bill. Your thoughts on Trump's first week and a half or two in office?
I think the only thing that can really be said is he's doing what he said he was going to do. I mean, it's obvious. It's irritated and angered many people. It's irritating and angering the globalists. But he is moving forward on most all of his campaign pledges, and this country, any country, is not used to that because usually politicians will tell you what you want to hear, and then once they're in, that's it. They don't follow through on anything that they say. But he is following through on what he said he would do, and I know many people that voted for Trump for one and only one reason, and that was his choice for Supreme Court. And I from what I can see, Gorsuch is definitely a conservative, so he's followed through on that promise.
Right, and I think, in fairness to the conversation, maybe we should level set and we should rewind time here. Let's just go back to the day of the inauguration, and I'll play this clip, which I think, at least from my perspective, Bill, is the first time in my history, in my lifetime, I've ever heard any president say what you're about to hear.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the Earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow.
I'll pause it there. Were you able to hear that okay, Bill?
Yes.
Now, I think what's really important and what needs to be said, and I've said it for a very long time, is I believe that the world, the Earth, has enough resources for everyone. And if we were ruled by benevolent dictators, the world could literally be an Eden. But the fact is that we've been ruled by malevolent dictators for far too long. And in Jim Willey's own words, what happened with the election of President Trump is that it was a coup against the neocon fascists, the Bush-Clinton cabal, the CIA, etc. Your thoughts on the speech we just heard from President Trump? Well, and guys, we just had a dropout on Skype with Bill, so I'm calling him back on his telephone, so little audio quality difference here. Bill, I was just saying, well, were you able to hear that from President Trump?
Yes, I heard what he had to say. Well, I think what Jim Willey said is absolutely correct. Trump is going 100% against the globalist grain, and obviously putting his own life in danger, because you're talking power, wealth, etc., that he's reversing.
Now, let me ask you this. As it relates to the executive orders, I feel very strongly that we in the alternative news media, the truth media, need to be intellectually honest about what's going on here, because if it had been Hillary the Witch Clinton who had won the White House, and she was signing executive orders hand over fist to strip us of our gun rights, to mandate vaccines, to do any number of tyrannical things, we would be up in arms. Now what we're
That's
seeing,
correct.
and what we're seeing is Donald Trump issue executive orders that are actually, we think, those of us who believe in what he's doing, that we think are good for the republic. But they're still executive orders, and there is a question of constitutionality. How do we strike a balance between reporting on the good things he's doing and calling him out for essentially being a benevolent dictator with these executive orders?
You just got to tell it like it is.
And what is it?
And you're doing it. I mean, I was never a big fan of executive orders. It looks like many of the executive orders that are being written are just reversing previous executive orders.
Right.
I absolutely agree with most of the executive orders. I mean, it's the executive order, the ban on immigration is, in my opinion, absolutely correct. We need to secure our borders. I would caution, however, from an investment standpoint, that you could wake up any morning and the world can have changed with one of his tweets. And you may or may not have time to reverse a wrong position or put on a correct position. So it's important to understand that the investment world, with the inauguration of Donald Trump, has the rules have changed. And one of my fears, and I wrote about this right after the election, is because he's moving away from globalism toward nationalism, the biggest danger is a currency/trade war. And in a trade war, no one wins.
Yeah, a currency trade war, and we can see that coming on quickly with Mexico, but also China. What strikes me as something that should be discussed is the fact that we seem to be making, or I should say Trump and his administration is rightly trying to make alliances with Russia to pull us back from the brink of potentially World War III, which Hillary Clinton was more than eager to get us into. That's terrific news. But on the flip side, things seem to be getting quite a bit more confrontational with China.
Yeah, that's a problem. If you saw what Tillerson said last week regarding the South China Sea islands, that we would obstruct, that they needed to stop building, and we would obstruct navigation. I mean, how are we going to do that? We can't do that militarily, and from a financial standpoint, they're our banker. Yeah, that's fraught with all kinds of danger.
Well, I should say this about Donald Trump. I was listening to an interview that Vladimir Putin had, and he was asked about Trump being flamboyant. And I thought that was funny, and I thought it was a great word, because even if he's doing the right things, he's in the White House. He won the race. Why can't he pull his ego back from, for instance, just the other day at a prayer breakfast, he was talking about the Apprentice ratings and how abysmal they've been for Schwarzenegger. And he made a joke that they should pray for the ratings for Schwarzenegger. And it's just ridiculous because he's now the president of the United States. He's got to check that ego, Bill.
In that respect, he does need to grow up, if you will. I do think that it was a calculated boast, if you will, when he was retorting back to the press that if it wasn't for illegal voting, he would have won the popular vote. And I think it was calculated because going forward, I could see investigations into voting irregularities, fraud, whatever you want to call it. And if you recall, they started to do a recount in Pennsylvania, they started to do a recount in Michigan, and then in Detroit and Philadelphia, some of the big cities, they were finding out that there were more votes cast for Hillary than voters registered.
Right.
So, and of course, the recounts were stopped because they didn't want to dig any deeper and uncover fraud on themselves. So I think some of what he's doing is calculated, and I think in that instance, where he picked the fight over the popular vote, or didn't pick it, but continued and responded to the press and to the left about the popular vote. I think he picked that fight to be able to run with it at a later date.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely calculating. We have to give him credit for doing the things that he said he would do so far.
I do want to make the comment, going back to the clip that you played of his inaugural address. He mentioned new technology, energy, space, if you will. My first thought, and I had written about this back in, I think, as early as September, October, and then again in November, and I know you've done some stuff on, why are all these world leaders going to Antarctica? And that's where my mind went when I watched that live. Maybe he was hinting at we are on the cusp of new technologies.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's an exciting idea and concept, and there is a lot of very strange things going on right now in Antarctica, as you well know. We have talked about it, and I just mentioned for folks, the Cliff High's WebBot project the data is suggesting that many, many strange, unusual things are going to be coming out of Antarctica here in coming months and years. And in his words, Antarctica will yield amazing things that the powers that be can't cover up. They're just going to have to live with it. They're going to have to address it. And maybe Trump knows some of this. And maybe the promise for humanity is greener days ahead instead of the Agenda 2030 days. I mean, at this rate, look, we have the mainstream media going out of its way to protest Trump, right? The Economist magazine itself is labeling Trump an insurgent in the White House. It just really seems that the corporate fascist power structure, the establishment, is still very much aligned against Trump, which to me speaks to the fact that he is in office doing things that are positive for the country and for the American people.
Yeah, and doing things counterproductive to what the plan was. And if you want to call it the George Soros plan, that's what I would label it.
You'll be amused by this. I saw a terrific tweet from actor James Woods, and I retweeted it saying, the best tweet of the year from a famous guy. And the tweet was this: President Donald Trump, the answer to all of your problems in 2 words, George Soros. It really sums it up. Should arrest.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, arrest Soros and put an end to this nonsense.
Well, I understand Soros is now in the crosshairs of the Hungarian government.
Yep, his NGOs are being banned from Hungary. And Hungary, by the way, is George Soros's birth country. It's where he was born. So
right.
That's an extra special bit of information that I think is particularly enjoyable, especially for those of us who understand that, George Soros is really an asset of the Rothschilds. I mean, at the end of the day, look, Bill, at the end of the day, people need to realize, and I know the libtards on the left don't, they don't realize, nor probably do they care, that Hillary Clinton was in the pocket of the Rothschilds, literally friends with Lady Rothschild, very warm, chummy relationship, as exposed by the WikiLeaks emails. Standing in contrast to this is Donald Trump, who, as far as I know, is not friends with the Rothschilds. I didn't see any WikiLeaks emails about Trump. right? I didn't see any Pizzagate emails about Trump. I don't see any evidence that Trump is a pedophile. He's talked about jailing the pedophiles. Pardon?
They certainly would have come out.
Yes.
Because everything possible was done to try to stop his run.
Let me ask you this as it relates to the economy. The jobs report even looks slightly better. I think there's several 100,000 people that have fallen off the unemployed list, or at least the those considered not to be working list. Do you see Trump?
It was a record number. It was 700 and some odd thousand.
Okay. Do you see Trump as being good for the economy? Do you see him as being able to turn this Titanic around, or are we still going to hit the iceberg no matter what he does?
No, I've said all along, I don't think anyone can fix what's already in place. He's going to preside over a bankruptcy, and we will at least go through the bankruptcy under the rule of law, not under the rule of friends of the Clintons. And I think this year is here we are 14 days into Mr. Trump's presidency. He's done many things that he promised to do, and it's only 14 days. So I think this year is going to, as I've said all along, I think it's going to be the year of the truth bomb. Now, is that going to include auditing the Fed? Will Fort Knox be audited? We still don't have an attorney general yet. What's going to happen when we have an attorney general? Will there be an investigation of the Clinton Foundation? Will there be an investigation of Pizzagate? Although I did see, and I didn't read the story, but I saw the headline. There was 474 people arrested in California for child trafficking.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And can only hope that spreads its way and things on the East Coast get investigated.
Yeah, that's actually a very important article you bring up, and you'll notice that it was completely ignored by the mainstream media. Don't you find that interesting, Bill? They want to malign Pizzagate, the Pizzagate investigation, as being quote-unquote fake news, roll out the red carpet for James Alefantis to do a PR interview. It wasn't even an interview, a PR session with Megyn Kelly on Fox News. They want to just sweep all of this under the rug, and then when something like this happens and 400-some people are arrested in California for child pedophilia, they also want to ignore that story. Is that also fake news?
I guess it's pick and choose.
Well,
but I think that's going to change. I can't say it's going to change from a media standpoint, but I can only hope, as I mentioned, we don't have we have an acting attorney general. And by the way, I thought it was great that he fired the previous acting attorney general within 2 hours of her basically saying they're not going to uphold the law. But the hope for me for this year is that truth of all sorts comes out.
Well, look.
Now, that's going to be disastrous for markets. It will be disastrous for the real economy. It's a disaster waiting to happen. But the truth, even if it hurts, is the truth and needs to be out.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that truth out is the most important thing. And you posited whether or not we'd see any prosecution of Hillary Clinton. How much truth will we see? Here's one piece of evidence I want to play for you here, Bill, that suggests we may get a whole lot of truth. This soundbite is from Jason Chavitz, who was told by Donald Trump personally, investigate whatever you want. Listen to this.
I wasn't planning on do this, but I'll share this with the members and those watching here. President Trump visited Philadelphia when we were at our planning and strategy session. Much to my surprise, Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, said that the president would like to speak with me at the conclusion of his remarks. So I went backstage, and the president, I met him back in 2012 or so, but I'd never chatted or interacted with him since. The president came up, greeted me, my wife and I, and here's what he said. And I think it's worth noting. He said, "You do a great job. You do a great job," which of course I agreed with. And then he said, "Listen, I understand that I'm the president. You have a job to do. You do the oversight. You don't slow down. You go after everything you want to go after. You look at anything you want to look at. I mean, if you sat there and heard what he said to me about pursuing oversight of the government and the function that we fulfill, you'd be pretty inspired. And it was inspiring to me. And for him to convey a message of don't slow down, go do your job, there's a lot to get after with the government, I think was a good message.
Well, that's an understatement. Not only was it a good message, it was a powerful message, it was on point, and it was very constitutional. And folks, you got to remember, Jason E. Chavez is the U.S. representative for Utah's 3rd Congressional District. He was elected in 2008, and he is the chairman of the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Sounds to me, Bill, like Donald Trump actually cares about truly reforming an out-of-control government.
I can only say bravo. I mean, that's fabulous. Investigate whatever you want. Wherever the evidence leads, investigate. And that is the true rule of law.
Yeah. You and I have been saying for a very long time that in order for the republic to survive, we need a return to the rule of law. And
that's what it's all about.
That soundbite is very powerful because Jason Chavez is saying, I mean, he was even inspired by the fact that Donald Trump came up to him and personally said, do whatever you need to do, keep digging, do your job. I'm behind you all the way. Because what we've seen in previous presidencies time and time again is we've seen the new president come in and tell the American people we don't need to look back, we need to look forward. Let's not look back at the crimes of the Clintons, let's look forward. Then Obama would come in and say, let's not look back at the crimes of the Bushes or Cheneys or Rumsfeld, let's look forward. We kept getting those talking points. That was a government talking point to keep the deep state on task and the American people from getting their feathers ruffled about crimes committed against them and against the Constitution. Trump appears to be standing in stark contrast to that and taking a completely different approach. And I know for a fact that despite CNN trying to malign Trump all day long, the majority of the American people, at least the people that voted for Trump, appreciate that. That's why we voted for him.
Well, it's always been a cover for cronyism. It's been a cover for fraud, theft, crime, you name it, for cronies.
Yep.
And, you know, Trump taking the attitude of following the rule of law, let's see where that brings us. It will ultimately bring us to reality. It'll bring us to real markets that actually clear at real levels.
All right. Well, I think to round out this conversation, I just want to remind people that, you know, the two pieces I did, one, the horrible truth about Trump, which was really pro-Trump, talking about the good things he's done, and the takeaway on that video was there was no horrible truth at that point. And then my follow-up video was called Truther or Tyrant because of the executive orders, trying to be intellectually honest about what executive orders are, right? And to round this thing up, come full circle, Wayne Madsen, an investigative journalist who I do hold in esteem, says, quote, the much anticipated constitutional crisis many feared would come about under President Trump's bombastic style of leadership took only 1 week into his administration to be realized, end quote. And he's talking about this immigration executive order. I guess at the end of the day, we have to continue to be intellectually honest about this. Where do we stand on the executive orders, Bill? I mean, I guess we just grin and bear it?
Well, like we spoke of earlier, we complained about executive orders, the many executive orders that we didn't agree with under Obama. Mm-hmm. I personally agree with much of the executive orders that Trump has already issued. But again, they're executive orders and they're not law. I guess I would say that I hope someone holds his feet to the fire and it actually goes to the Supreme Court and some type of ruling is made as to the constitutionality of presidents issuing executive orders. Because it very well could get out of hand under Trump or under a successor to Trump. The danger of executive orders is you're leaving the door open to dictatorship.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why I want to raise the issue, and I want to keep covering the issue because I think it's important to be honest about this because, again, if it was Hillary Clinton in the White House doing this and she was issuing unconstitutional, draconian executive orders, we would all be up in arms demanding her impeachment. Now, the left, because they're crazy, thinks that the things he's doing are bad for the republic, but the fact of the matter is those of us who are right-thinking and wired properly understand that he's trying to undo all of the evil that has been done under the Obama administration and even prior to that. So, hey, before I let you go, I should really get your thoughts on this. Did you happen to see just a couple of weeks ago the Sheriff Joe Arpaio press conference in which they issued their sort of final report on the Obama birth certificate, and they issued some really smoking gun facts from two experts, both on opposite sides of the globe, that both came to the same conclusion that Obama's birth certificate, which was of course made public by the White House, was an absolute fraud, and it was created from the birth certificate of a woman who was born in Hawaii some 90-some years ago. Did you see that press conference?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, what'd you think of that? Because you'll notice the mainstream media ignored it.
Well, yeah, it was totally ignored. And I even wrote, I think the first article of the year I wrote, I titled it 2017, the Year of the Truth Bomb, and that was one of the, I just threw out, 7, 8, 10 potential truths, and I said, and even a full investigation as to his birth, whether he's a natural-born citizen or not. I mean, if it turns out he was not a natural-born citizen, now you really have a constitutional crisis, because you have a guy who was in the office for 8 years, signed his name to all kinds of stuff, and if he's not a natural-born citizen and was not legally entitled to take the office of president, that's a can of worms that may be better left unopened.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens because Trump appears willing to tackle just about any controversy, and my latest thing has been to challenge President Trump to take on the claims from NIST whistleblower Peter Michael Ketchum, a 15-year employee of that government agency, NIST. He's come forward to expose NIST's report on the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 as a total fraud, and it's just powerful testimony. I'll play just a clip of it right here.
The more I investigated, the more apparent it became that NIST had reached a predetermined conclusion that refused, avoided, and dismissed the evidence. Awareness is growing of the disconnect between the NIST World Trade Center reports and logical reasoning.
I saw a clip, a YouTube video of Donald Trump, I think it was later in the week of 9/11/2001, where he was talking from a builder standpoint and said the buildings coming down like that were an impossibility.
That's right. Bill, I look forward to the rest of 2017. I mean, the first month has flown by, and I think we are in for a very interesting ride, to say the least.
Well, all we can hope for is the truth to come out.
Amen.
A whole bunch of truths.
Yeah, amen. All right, Bill, can you remind people about how people can find you?
Yeah, you can go to JSMindset, MINESET.com. You can see my work, and Jim and I do a weekly talk interview. Occasionally we interview people in the financial industry, and generally those are pretty good talks.
All right, great. Bill, thanks so much for your time.